When I heard you were coming, part of me was excited. Part of me was in terror. And part of me was nervous. I had heard many stories of you conquering city after city, and I wondered, when would this boy come here? And now, all that separates you and me is this river Hydaspes. And I have sworn to protect my citizens, for I am their king. King Porus was about to face the biggest foreign invasion his kingdom would have ever seen. He was a huge man, 7 feet tall with broad shoulders, and he wore a golden armor with a roaring tiger in the center. He liked to wear his long, well-groomed hair into a bun in the top, and his mustache and beard seemed to fit snugly around his mouth, and they too seemed to curl towards their edges. Porus sat on his war elephant behind his mahout, with his bows and arrows to his left and his spears and javelin to his right. And with his left hand placed on his dagger, he was ever ready to assault anybody who dared come near him. And his right hand, he signaled to all his generals to commence the attack on the invaders. A few of the invaders had managed to cross the river and reach Porus's side, a few songs north of Porus's camp. And to his amazement, or rather to his astonishment, he saw a few invaders dared to cross the mighty river in front of his camp and attack their campsite head on. Porus saw the boy king and charged north. Hundreds of war elephants formed the front lines of his attack. Each and every war elephant, guided by its mahout, was protected by thick sheets of leather on either sides, and their ivory tusks were riddled with smaller, sharper, barbed wire type objects. With a handful of archers on top of each of these elephants raining down arrows at their enemies, this whole unit was a formidable war machine. The tradition of keeping a well-groomed hair and mustache and beard seemed to run throughout Porus's army, and his men wore their hair and the beard like their king. With their swords unsheathed, they rode on their horses and galloped towards the enemy, and the earth under the invaders' feet began to tremble. Battle ensued, and there was conflict, and swords clamored. Like Porus, the boy king too seemed to fight at the front lines amongst his army men. Porus noticed that even though at such a difficult situation, the boy king was calm and yet dealt decisive blows to his army. With quick counterattacks and successive movements of his horses, the boy king was able to bring down one elephant after the other. And Porus's generals started counting their minutes. Porus signaled once again to his army to retreat to an advantageous position. But that was too late, as his army was again flanked by the invaders from the south. And he found himself in a dire situation. Far away, he could see his son being brought down from his chariot with a spear. But unfazed by that, he rained arrows from the top of his elephant and killed as many enemies as he could. Porus knew that it was only a matter of time, but he didn't give up. With a war cry, he rallied all his army men who would go to any end for their king. And suddenly, the sky was filled with a rain of arrows, and Porus jumped to dismount his elephant and unsheathed his dagger. His presence on the battle floor now was ominous, and the enemy began to tremble. He quickly moved aside to avoid a thrust of an enemy's spear and pulled it with his left hand and impaled the enemy with his right. He now possessed the spear and the dagger, and he was invincible. His countrymen felt like they now had a chance. They smelled victory. But Porus knew that it was only a matter of time. One by one, he saw his army men fall to the ground. But he continued his dance, avoiding and deflecting as many enemy blows and thrusting and landing his own. His mind began to drift when he caught sight of the boy king. And he said to himself, "Alexander! Now that I know what you're capable of, I must not let you win." With a spring in his feet and a sudden surge of energy, Porus charged towards Alexander, avoiding, deflecting, and taking as many blows as he could handle. And at the last moment, with every ounce of energy, he let loose his spear. Alexander was no boy king. At 29 years of age, and after 15 years of conquests, he had never lost a battle. And he was not about to go down in this one. He was king of all known land. He was king of kings. He was Alexander the Great. With equal agility, Alexander deflected the spear from Porus and swiftly incapacitated him and brought him to his knees. Before I decided to start my invasion of the Indian subcontinent, I sought guidance from a seer, said Alexander. His words were true. His words have come true. I have never faced an enemy king who would fight till his last breath, who would fight till the very end and not run away on sight of Alexander the Great. I feel extremely proud and I'm honored to have witnessed your courage and your bravery. Tell me, Porus, how should I treat you? Porus helps himself off the ground and dusts his beards. With his head held high, he looks at Alexander and says, "Treat me like a king would treat another."